can get financially ahead. And if you're older, then use this as a checklist to make sure you're on track. I promise, if you just implement a few of these things, you'll be so far ahead of everyone else, they won't even believe you. I managed to become a millionaire in my 20s. However, if I watched a video like this when I was younger, then I'm sure I could have made my first million much faster. Don't just watch the part of the video that's for your age. You need to do all of these things. And if you skip steps, you might end up regretting it. Right, let's kick this off with age 13. When it comes to investing, the hands down most important thing is time in the market. But what does that actually mean? Well, put simply, you want to have your money invested for as long as possible so it can start growing rapidly, like a snowball rolling down a hill and eventually turning into an avalanche. So if you're actually 13 or younger and you're watching this video right now, I think all us oldies would agree that you're in the best possible position. So how do you actually start investing at this age? Well, as you're currently not of legal age to invest on your own, you're going to need to convince a parent or guardian to open up something called a custodial account. Now, I understand it might be hard to speak to your parents about money and investing. My parents never ever spoke about money at all, let alone investing. So if you want to, feel free to show them the next 30 seconds of this video so I can help persuade them to open up one for you. A custodial account is an investing account controlled by an adult for the benefit of a minor, typically a family member. These have different names depending on where you live. In the UK, we have something called a Junior Stocks and Shares ISA, which lets your parent or guardian invest up to £9,000 a year on your behalf. Now, of course, they don't have to do this much, but just think, every birthday or Christmas, you could ask them to put some money into the account and invest in some stocks and shares. I'm not a financial advisor, and this shouldn't be taken as financial advice. However, over the years, I've just invested in a simple low-cost S&P 500 index fund. This invests your money across just over 500 of the biggest public companies in the USA, so you don't have to worry about picking individual stocks. The historical average yearly return of the S&P 500 is 12.58% over the last 10 years, as of the end of May 2024. Of course, investments can go down as well as up. If you've got a Junior Stocks and Shares ISA, then you'll be able to start managing it for yourself from the age of 16, and you could start to withdraw money from the age of 18 if you wanted to. But if you're anything like me, once you've got the investing bug, you'll probably want to keep it growing. In America, you have two main options, a UGMA and a UTMA. These both have unlimited contributions, but you could trigger gift tax if your parent or guardian puts in more than $18,000 in 1 year. The only real difference between these two is that with a UTMA, you can also invest in real estate and fine art. A custodial account can be set up with most banks and brokerages. My favourite is Vanguard for both the UK and the USA, as they've pretty low fees and they've certainly been around for a long time. So if you're younger than 18, then please promise me you talk to your parents about getting one of these accounts, as it gives you such a head start. Right, moving on to age 14. Besides time, another huge advantage you have at this age is that you probably don't have to pay rent and other monthly bills. This means you have the freedom to try different ways to make money, since you don't need a reliable income every single month. You should go out and try everything from cleaning driveways with pressure washers to competitive sports. Not everything has to be about making money. You can learn a lot from other activities, which you can use to make money when you're older. My son Curtis used to get up at 4 a.m. most mornings for swimming practice. Of course, he didn't earn any money from this, but it did teach him discipline. So when he started his business at 18, he could outwork his competition. I speak to so many teenagers who tell me they don't have a talent, but when I ask them what their hobbies are, they can't even name a few they've tried. You can't expect to find your talent if you don't try a wide range of different things. If it doesn't work out, then that's absolutely fine. Just try the next thing and the next. When you find something you're naturally good at or enjoy getting better at, double down on it and make it your mission to become one of the best. Next, age 15. One of the things I miss most about being younger is birthday and Christmas presents. Not that I got a lot, as my parents weren't very wealthy, but I definitely got more than I do now. That's just the reality of growing up, especially for young men. So instead of asking for presents like PS4 games and other things that you're not really going to care about in less than a few months. A huge life hack is to ask for cash whenever possible. I'd also highly recommend going and getting a Saturday job. Now, don't be too picky at this stage. Even working in a retail store behind a counter can earn you a nice bit of extra money. You'll also learn a lot of useful social skills that will prepare you for the real world. Doing both of these things will help you start stashing away cash as long as you avoid the temptation to spend it. I like to use the word stash instead of save, as I have a problem with the way most teenagers approach saving money. They will save for months and then go and spend it all on a new game console or a day at the theme park. Now, obviously, we all like a roller coaster, that's for sure. This shouldn't be what you're stashing your cash for, though. Of course, you should spend some of it to have fun. However, see your stash more like a launch pad that you can use to make even more money. The hardest thing in the world is starting with $0 to your name. So if you can avoid that, even if you have as little as $100, then it's going to make everything so much easier. Oh, and I almost forgot. Go and apply for your provisional driving licence. In the UK, you can do this when you're 15 years and 9 months old, so it's worth getting, even if you don't intend to start using it right away. Right, now it's getting serious. Age 16. You've got a 2-year window before you enter the real world, so it's time to really think about what skills you're going to start focusing on and developing. By now, if you've done all the things I've mentioned in this video, then you should have a pretty solid idea of what you're good at. These may seem unrelated at first, but pick a handful of them and start stacking your skills on top of each other. When I was younger, I was talented at selling, designing mechanics and woodwork. So I invested my money into different things that would help me get better at those skills. Now, I had no idea how I'd link them together, but I trusted that in the end, it would all make sense. I'm not really talking about buying courses, as there's so many fake gurus out there just trying to scam you out of your money. With that said, there are some good ones around as well. Even better though, if you can find some sort of community to join where you can chat and learn, so much the better. However, the majority of your money should be invested in equipment. I remember when my son bought his first iMac for $500 from his uncle. He did this with the money he'd saved from doing part-time jobs. Because that was the biggest purchase he'd ever made at the time, he would sit at that Mac and learn everything about it. This led to him teaching himself how to edit videos and use Photoshop. Investing in tools like this can really open so many doors. Between now and 18, your biggest aim should be to develop these different skills that you can later use to make more money than someone that just decided to play video games. This is because you can come into the real world with some actual value to offer. This heavily cuts down the amount of training a company needs to give you, which takes the burden off them. On to age 17. Now listen to me very carefully. You need to pass your driving test. Yes, I know you probably don't need to drive anywhere at 17, but trust me, the sooner you do this, the better. In some states in the USA, you can do this as early as 16. Remember, you only need to do it once. Not being able to drive is one of the biggest things stopping most people from starting a side hustle. I mean, what if you have the chance to work with a client but they live 30 minutes away and you can't get a lift every week? You'd have to rely on public transport, and we all know how unreliable that is. You'll probably end up getting a bad name for yourself and coming across as unprofessional, leading to that opportunity going out the window. One of my key rules to this day is to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. And to be late, well, that is unacceptable. So if you're watching this now and considering driving lessons, do it. Please don't be that person that regrets not jumping on it sooner. Yes, it might be a bit scary at first. I thought it was really exciting, to be honest, but think about the bigger picture. Once you've learned, you can use some of that money you've been stashing away to buy yourself a cheap starter car, then nothing's holding you back. Now it's time for the big one, age 18. The world really opens up to you once you turn 18. Now you're officially classed as an adult, and there are so many things you can do to get financially ahead. I wish someone had sat me down on my 18th birthday and told me exactly what I needed to do. So that's what I'm going to do for you now. I've made a checklist of 7 things you need to do to set yourself up for success. Even if you're over the age of 18, it's super important you do all of these things sooner rather than later. Let me know in the comments, how many you've ticked off. Number 1, open your own bank accounts. Having your own bank accounts that only you have access to is the first logical step you should take once you're over the age of 18. I say accounts because really and truly, you should have 2. The first is a current account, or as the Americans call it, a checking account. This is where your money should flow in and out. For example, let's say you got yourself a job at a coffee shop. The coffee shop pays your wage into your current account, and then you can use that money on whatever you want, really. The second is a high interest savings account. This is where you should start building up an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of your living expenses, just in case something out of your control happens and your income dries up. It's like when you chug a big pot shield potion on Fortnite, but keep some minis handy. So where should you open up these accounts? Well, you need to be looking for banks that don't charge high fees. I remember I used to get charged for stupid little things all the time. Having these accounts shouldn't cost you money. I also think you should have 2 accounts with different banks, as it makes your savings way less easy to spend. When it's out of sight, it's out of mind. If you're in the UK, then I'd recommend going with a challenger bank like Monzo for your current account. Now, this isn't sponsored, but their app is genuinely very good. For your savings account, Chase is a great option as they're currently offering 4.1% interest on your money, so you'll get paid for just leaving your money in the account. In the USA, I'd recommend looking at Ally Bank or Bank of America because they offer minimal fees and have really strong online banking service. Number 2. Get a credit card. When I was younger, I believed that if you never borrowed, you'd have an amazing credit score. Since you never took out a loan or made any late payments, it makes sense, right? Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. Taking out a credit card when you turn 18 is the perfect tool to build up your credit score. You can do this by using your credit card to pay for the things you would normally pay for in cash, like paying for the gas in your car, for example, and then paying the card off in full every month without fail. Using it this way will ensure that you never get charged any interest at the same time as building up your credit score. A credit score is kind of like your Uber rating, but for money. Banks look at this and then they decide whether or not they're going to give you a loan. And if they do, what interest rate they're going to charge you. Now, lots of people are against the idea of getting a credit card because they're taught from a really young age that debt is bad. I know this because that's exactly what I was taught. My dad would always say, never a lender or a borrower be. This was a saying that originally came from rich people years and years ago to keep the workers down, as they knew by borrowing, the working class could create wealth for themselves. The rich wanted to keep getting richer and keep the poor in their place. If I had a credit card when I was 18, it would have been much easier to get a mortgage sooner and buy my first property. I would have also been able to borrow more money at lower interest rates. Now, that may not sound significant, but over a long period, like a mortgage, this can really add up. Number 3, open an investing account. The key is to open the correct type of account. You'll often hear people throwing around terms like Roth IRA in the USA, stocks and shares ISA in the UK, and TFSA in Canada, and supers in Australia. So if you don't have one of these accounts, then you're missing out, as they allow you to avoid having to pay taxes on your investments, but they do have limits because they're extremely powerful. Nowadays, opening an investing account is very simple, as you can do it all from your mobile phone. A great thing about these investing apps is that it actually gives you the ability to buy fractional shares. So rather than having to pay $220 for an Apple share, you can invest as little as $1. Now, I wish I had this option when I was younger, as it would have allowed me to get in some early experience with investing without having to take any big risks. One of my favourite investing platforms is Trading 212, as they offer fractional shares and also stocks and shares ISAs. Since I was planning to talk about their app anyway, I reached out to them to see if they'd be interested in sponsoring this portion of the video. They agreed and are offering a free stock worth up to £100 to anyone that uses the code Tilbury when they create an account. Plus, you can get more free stocks by inviting your friends. Both of you will get a free share as long as they fund their account. If you aren't quite ready to invest for real, one of the really cool things about Trading 212 is they let you practice investing with fake money. You can get familiar with with the markets using real data without risking any actual money. So if you're a little uncomfortable with investing or just want to try out some strategies before putting your own money on the line, this is a great way to get started. Also, don't worry if you've already opened an account within the last 10 days. You can still use the promo code Tilbury in the app and receive your free share. So feel free to pause the video right now, get your free stock and then continue watching. Number 4. Carefully consider university. So many teenagers have asked me, is going to university a scam? My answer is always yes and no. On one hand, for some careers, you certainly need to go to university, like doctors, nurses and teachers. There is a direct result from doing university courses like this. You get a degree and the career path opens up to you. These professions play critical roles in our society, directly impacting the way we function. So are absolutely not a scam. I actually think these types of courses should be free and reserved for the people with the best grades and passion for following one of these careers. However, on the other hand, there are a lot of other courses out there that don't open up job opportunities directly. And therefore, why waste your money and more importantly, your time studying at university for something you don't really need? Skilled trades like plumbing, entrepreneurship and tech, well, they don't require a degree. It's more about how good you are at what you do. Your track record and results will speak for itself. I mean, I read through my comments on here and I've seen lots of people claim they've learned more from me than they did in their business degree. Now, that really says a lot. For me, and for a lot of other employers, it's more about your practical experience and attitude than anything else. So please, don't be pressured into going to university to study something you don't care about and waste 4 years of your life. I mean, I heard there's a golf management degree now. How ridiculous. I'm going to be sharing with you all the strategies that actually work for me, as well as lots of my mistakes, so hopefully you can do even better. This is the story of how I went from a small English town to the rolling hills of San Francisco and the bustling city of Shanghai, China, including all the challenges I faced along the way. Who knows, by watching this video to the end, it may open up a new pathway for you that you might want to walk down. You'll also find out why a simple desk like this can mean so much to me. If that sounds good, then give that like button a smash and strap in for the wild ride that is my life. Let me take you back to 1985. That's the last time I walked out of those gates. I was 16 years old, I was tall, skinny, and I had ginger hair. And I was broke, unfortunately. But I knew I wanted to make my mark on the world, and there was no way I could do that sitting in lessons, learning about things I wasn't interested in. So I went out to seek my fortune. But before we get there, let me take you back to my teen years. I was always looking to make money. I know it's a little cliche, but when I was a teen, my main side hustle was selling candy and cans of soda to all the other kids in the playground. On the weekend, I would also go fishing and catch hundreds of mackerel, which I sold around the neighbourhood. I remember knocking on every single door possible. I was offering a great deal, 10 fish for $1. But unfortunately, no one wanted 10 fish. So I was forced to go back to the drawing board and restructure my business with a new strategy. I decided from now on I'll be selling 5 fish for $1, and I was shocked by the results. Everyone wanted some. Looking back now, these years were so important as I was practicing some of the most important life skills out there, sales and confidence. Without these skills, I don't think I'd have been able to achieve success in later life. So if you just take one thing from this video, then it should be to start honing your sales skills and being confident. This brings me back to these school gates. When I left here, I had several paths that I could follow. I decided I wanted a 9-to-5 job. I needed to learn a skill that would set me up for life. Going to work at 9 AM and finishing at 5 PM was the life that school had been drilling into me for years. So I really threw myself into it and actually lined up 5 different jobs because I was so keen to be successful. I had the choice between being a builder, an electrician, a refrigeration engineer, a shop assistant, or a carpenter's apprentice. It was a tough decision, but in the end, I decided on becoming a carpenter. The pay wasn't great at around $2 an hour, but I was learning a skill and I could see the potential for moving up in the company, and I really thought that this was my ticket to success. I really threw myself into my carpentry apprenticeship and I learned everything I could. I even won leadership awards, and I really felt like I was moving forward with my life. I finished my apprenticeship with honours from the college and thought, here we go. all the big jobs that come in my way. But unfortunately, my manager seemed to take a dislike to me. Maybe he started to feel a little bit threatened by my success and therefore decided to give me all the bad jobs. For months on end, he assigned me to making wooden trash cans in the back room. This gave me no ability to show off my skills that I'd learned and prevented me from working my way up the company to a higher paid job. I thought to myself, I hadn't really studied all this time to make wooden trash cans. Nowadays, it's a sort of repetitive job a robot would do. What was even worse is when I looked around the workshop, I saw many other people doing lots more interesting jobs. So I asked to speak to the manager, and where we're filming this is the exact spot where we stood. I said I needed more of a challenge. I couldn't keep making these bins. And you know what he said to me? He said, you're making these bins today, you'll be making these bins tomorrow. We got a 5-year contract with Walmart. You're going to be making a lot of these bins. Now that's when I realised I was completely powerless working a 9-to-5 job at the mercy of whoever was in charge. The pay was only just enough to cover my bills, which meant I couldn't just quit, but I was also unable to save any money. I was essentially trapped. So I got a Saturday job working in a radio control model shop. I also started a side hustle flipping cars, which basically consisted of finding underpriced cars, fixing them up and then selling them for a profit. To this day, I still own this Ford Fiesta XR2 Mark I. It's a 1985 model, and the cars I was buying at that stage were costing me $200 to $300, and I was usually flipping them for I say $500 to $600. This little beauty's worth a little bit more than that now though. As well as doing all of this, I was also teaching people to fly radio controlled helicopters on a Sunday. There was a huge demand at the time, and all Sunday I would be booked out as long as the weather was good. Having these multiple side hustles allowed me to finally build out some kind of emergency fund. This is so important as it gives you the freedom to take advantage of any opportunities that come your way without having to worry about paying your bills. There is a huge opportunity cost that comes from living paycheck to paycheck, as you're so focused on next month's wage that you end up going through life with your eyes half closed and passing up on many opportunities without even knowing it. One day at work, the boss asked if anyone wanted to help install this beautiful staircase at a customer's house. I jumped at the chance. It was one of the most impressive houses that I'd ever seen. It had everything. I'm talking marble floors, chandeliers, a private swimming pool and a garage full of beautiful sports cars. It was my dream house. I started daydreaming and adding up how many years it would take me to earn enough money to buy a place like this. And I got gradually more and more demoralised, as even with all my side hustles, I realised I still would never have enough money. It was so close, but just so far at the same time, and I felt there was really nothing more I could do to achieve it. I was absolutely exhausted, physically and mentally. I was working every hour of every day. While installing the staircase, I would often look out of the window and see the owner relaxing in the garden or going off to play golf, and I really couldn't understand how this guy managed to have the life that he wanted and go and have fun whenever he wished. So I had to ask him a few questions, and he told me all about how running his business gave him the ability to make money while he slept. This is when I first discovered passive income. I'd never thought this was really possible for me, as school had only ever taught me one way of making money, and that was working a normal job. This concept of making passive income was so alien to me, but it really got the wheels turning in my mind. If this was a normal guy and he was able to do all this, then I was pretty sure that I could do it too. I started thinking back to my school years and selling those fish. That was my first real experience of running a small business, and I'd loved every second of it, from sourcing to selling the product. I couldn't believe that I'd been suppressing this for years and trying to conform to what society wanted me to do. Nowadays, passive income has become a bit of a buzzword on the internet, and I don't completely agree with the term, as it can sound a little misleading. Kickstarting passive income is certainly not an easy thing to do, but the idea is that you can do something once, like setting up a business or investing some money, and then earn from it even when you're not working. Of course, this requires some maintenance, but in my opinion, it's a better way to make money than working a 9-to-5 job if you want to be successful when you're younger, as your time is limited and therefore your income is capped. So now I knew that passive income was the answer. I devised a plan of escape. To have the best chance of success, I knew it was important to create a business in an industry that I was both familiar with and also passionate about. And I was lucky, I had the perfect idea. The shop I was working in on Saturdays was a radio control model store. Over the years that I'd been working there, I spotted with lots of things they could be doing differently and all the mistakes that they were making. I researched and found the perfect location for a store. I even came up with the perfect name, which was inspired by an old TV show I used to watch when I was younger, Model World. I could really see the potential with this shop and how it would eventually operate without me even having to be there, essentially creating passive income. It finally gave me some hope and direction while I was working my normal job, as I knew that it was now only a temporary situation. Unfortunately, not a lot of people believed in me. I came from a working class background and I had little to no qualifications, so no one thought I'd be able to break into the market, except for one of my friends, who I told my entire plan to. I couldn't wait to quit my job and get started, so I could prove everyone wrong. I just needed to get enough money together first. Within a few months, Model World Shop was up and running. But it was nothing to do with me. My friend had stolen my idea and done it himself. I felt so betrayed and frustrated that I'd trusted him with all my plans. I even started thinking to myself that maybe being an entrepreneur wasn't actually right for me. I was stuck in my 9-to-5 job being ordered around by my manager with every bit of hope shattered. The worst part was watching my friend living my dream. I felt like a sprinter chained up in the starting blocks, unable to release all that energy. It was one of the worst feelings in my life. The whole future I built in my head started to come crashing down. Looking back, this was a great life lesson for me, although I didn't see it like that at the time. If you have a great idea, then it's best to operate in the shadows. Maybe tell parts of your plans to different people, but don't give the whole game away like I did. After this huge setback, I decided to pick myself up and keep working. I grinded as hard as I could and bought my first apartment to build up my credit score. I thought I was working hard before, but this was really the next level. I worked every hour under the sun, as I wasn't going to let my financial situation leave me open to having my dreams taken away from me again. This just shows the path to passive income is by no means easy. There can be a lot of setbacks along the way, but if you stay focused, then opportunities will present themselves. As if by magic, one day I heard some great news that my friend wanted to sell Model World. I'd visited a few times and noticed that he wasn't giving it the attention it needed. It had huge potential, but his passions were not in the business. I knew I needed to buy the shop and get my dreams back on track. This was the opportunity that I'd been preparing myself for, and I wasn't going to let it slip through my fingers again. I had a little bit of money behind me, but it still wasn't going to be enough. Nowhere near enough. But I'd built up a good credit score, so I thought, I know what, I'll leverage the money I had and see if I can get a bank loan. He'd taken my great idea, he'd taken my name, but the one thing he couldn't take from me was my passion, and I knew that was the secret ingredient to making this business a great passive income generating machine. So I created the best business plan I could and got a meeting with the bank. I'd banked there since I was a kid and I had a good credit score, so I was hoping that everything would go smoothly.
Within 10 minutes, I'd been denied the loan. It was the worst interview of my life. I felt like I'd been kicked out of the bank. It was unreal. My head was down. I was walking back to my car. And do you know what? I really didn't know what to do. It was like being back at that house again. So close, yet so far. I had to pick myself up. And as luck would have it, the next building I stumbled on was this bank here. I hustled my way in and I got a meeting right there and then with the manager.
He actually said it was a very interesting idea and not only gave me the loan but promised to be one of my first customers. I have since asked him what made him take a chance on me, and he said he was always eager to help out the younger generation, and when he saw how passionate and hard working I was, he just couldn't say no. This is a perfect example of where preparation and resilience meets opportunity. You never know when your next stroke of luck is around the corner, and for me it quite literally was just around the corner. So without any hesitation, I closed the deal on Model World, the rights to the name and all the products they had. It was finally mine. I knew the hard work was yet to come, but it was mine. The first day I opened the shop, I had a sleeping bag behind the counter because I knew if I didn't make enough money that day, I'd be sleeping there because I certainly didn't have enough gas to drive the car home. Luckily, the first day was a great success. All the selling and negotiation skills I'd learned when I was younger came in really useful. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to make my business profitable.
After 3 years, we'd turned over $1 million, and it was crazy. It was crazy times, but it was good fun times, and we had more challenges along the way. After 10 years, we had 3 shops and a warehouse stuffed full of gear, but we wanted to be number one, so we had plans to push on even more.
I was generating millions in passive income and I felt like I'd finally made it, but I didn't realise just how open I was to losing everything. When it seems to be going amazingly well, you can start to get a little complacent as it seems like nothing can stand in your way. This is really dangerous as you stop innovating and take your eye off the ball. I was here as in a frenzy and everyone is asking the same question. Should I sell now before it gets worse? But there's more to this than meets the eye. If you followed me for a while, you know I'm a serious investor who's obsessed with the stock market. And since so many of you have started investing because of my videos, I feel a responsibility to give you my honest take on the situation. So before you panic, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture together. Every market crash has a cause, and this one isn't random. There are three main triggers behind it, and all of them tie back to one man, Donald Trump. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, this isn't about politics. I'm not here to take sides, and as a British investor looking in, my only concern is how this impacts investors like you and me. So let's break down the three biggest triggers behind this crash, why they matter, and what you can do to benefit from all this mayhem. Trigger one is Trump's trade war. Trump has always pitched himself as the ultimate deal maker. He's the guy who fights for American jobs and plays hardball with other countries. But the trade wars he's fighting could increase your weekly shopping bill and cause a recession. The last time the US tried this, it helped trigger the Great Depression, wiping out jobs and wrecking the economy. Now, history might be repeating itself. Stocks are already crashing, prices are rising, and if this spirals, it won't just hurt Wall Street, it'll hit you where it matters most, your bank account. Let me take you back to 1930, when I was just a boy. The US government decided to slap massive taxes called tariffs on imported goods to protect American businesses from foreign competition. It was called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, and it turned out to be one of the worst economic mistakes in history. At first, it seemed like it would help. American companies wouldn't have to compete with cheap imports and more products would be made in the USA. But there was a big problem. Other countries fought back. Nations that used to trade with the US started raising their own tariffs, making it harder for American businesses to sell products overseas. Trade slowed to an absolute crawl. Businesses collapsed and millions lost their jobs. Instead of fixing the economy, it helped turn a regular recession into the Great Depression, one of the worst financial crises ever. Fast forward nearly a century and Trump has brought back tariffs in a big way. In February 2025, Trump announced a 10% tariff on Canadian energy imports and a 25% tariff on other Canadian goods. In retaliation, Canada imposed a 25% tariff on American imports. Then in March, Ontario implemented a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the US, affecting states like New York, Michigan and Minnesota. However, in my opinion, this was more of a symbolic move that wouldn't have seriously damaged the US economy. However, Trump didn't hold back, and instead of just brushing it off, he fired back by increasing tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium to 50%. Unlike Canada's move, this wasn't just for show. It hit Canada's manufacturing industry hard while also driving up steel prices for American businesses that rely on imports. But why am I telling you all this? Well, this is where the real problem starts. Tariffs sound good on paper, as they're meant to punish foreign businesses while encouraging more stuff to be made in America. But in reality, they end up hurting regular people more than anyone else. As a business owner who manufactures products and imports from China myself, I know that when businesses are forced to pay more for materials, they don't just absorb the cost, they pass it on to their customers. That means higher prices on cars, appliances and electronics. In addition to this, food becomes more expensive because supply chains get disrupted, meaning that everyday essentials cost more, stretching household budgets even further. On top of that, other countries aren't just sitting around while Trump raises tariffs, they're forming new alliances to trade without the US. China is leading the charge with the BRICS alliance, partnering with Brazil, Russia, India and South Africa to reduce dependence on American trade. So the more the US isolates itself, the more other countries look elsewhere for business. So what's my opinion on all of this as an experienced investor? Well, if Trump goes all in on this trade war, history suggests it'll do more harm than good. While some industries might get a short-term boost, The long-term damage, such as higher prices, weaker global ties, and a slowing US economy, could far outweigh any benefits. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't think Trump actually wants high tariffs. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. Trump is, at his core, a businessman and a deal maker, just like me. That's why I believe he's using tariffs as a negotiation tactic, not as an end goal. So if that's true, what does he actually want? Well, I think he's after free global trade, but on terms that favour the US. And if he pulls that off, it could pay off big time. However, the problem is his approach is creating massive uncertainty. The constant backtracking, new tariffs and mixed signals are spooking the stock market because investors hate unpredictability. If this drags on too long, it could shake confidence so much that it pushes the economy towards recession, something even Trump's own administration has admitted they're willing to risk. Right now, the market isn't just reacting to tariffs. It's reacting to uncertainty about what comes next. And in investing, uncertainty is one of the biggest killers of confidence. Trigger 2 is Trump's stance on NATO. Trump has openly questioned the role of NATO, the military alliance that protects Western countries. He suggested that the US shouldn't keep defending allies unless they start paying more for their own protection. While that might sound like a fair demand, if the US steps back from its NATO commitments, it could create a power vacuum that countries like Russia and China might exploit. Markets hate uncertainty. The second investors sense that world stability is at risk, they panic. If NATO weakens, it could encourage Russia to push further into Europe, or even lead to new conflicts as countries try to adjust to a world without the USA acting as the global police force. More conflicts mean higher military spending, unpredictable trade relationships, and spikes in energy prices, all of which can rattle the stock market. Trigger 3 is Trump's secret plan. There's been a theory circulating that Trump may be crashing the stock market on purpose. I know that sounds crazy, but there is some evidence for it. Trump has never been a fan of high interest rates. In fact, he's called them ridiculous and has openly attacked the Federal Reserve for keeping them high. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The Fed is technically independent, meaning Trump can't just tell them to cut interest rates, but their decisions are based on economic conditions. If the stock market crashes and a recession seems inevitable, the Fed has no choice but to step in and slash interest rates to prevent a total meltdown. But why does Trump want lower rates? Well, because high interest rates slow down the economy. Businesses borrow less, stocks struggle, people stop spending as much, and for Trump, who loves growth and hates anything that makes America look weak, they're a problem. It's not just about making the stock market go up, it's way bigger than that. The US government is drowning in $36.5 trillion of debt, and when interest rates are high, the cost of that debt goes through the roof. Think of it like a massive credit card bill. Imagine you owe $36,500 and your credit card company charges 10% interest per year. That means before you even start paying down the actual debt, you're being charged $3,650 every single year just in interest. Now imagine the credit card company suddenly slashes the interest rate to 3%. Instead of paying $3,650 per year, your interest drops to just $1,095 annually. That's a saving of $2,555 every single year. Now you can put this money towards actually paying off your debt instead of just keeping up with your interest payments. Well, that's exactly what Trump might be doing, but on a $36.5 trillion scale. If the Fed lowers interest rates, a multi-millionaire by the age of 35, and how you can do the exact same thing. So I've got a simple question for you. Do you want to be rich and have the freedom that comes with being financially stable? Many people do. Why do you think there's so many get-rich-quick schemes out there? Most people, though, unfortunately have a lottery mentality. They're just waiting for the magic fairy to come down and hand them $1 million. Do I look like the magic fairy to you? If the answer is no, and I really hope it is no, then smash that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. The truth is, lots of people think that winning a chunk of money will make all your problems just disappear. But they'll be in for an absolute shock.
Without the correct investing and mindset strategies, it will be all gone, and in no time you'll be back to square one. You need a solid, consistent investment plan which gradually builds your wealth over time. Long-term investing will give great returns. When I was younger, I always wanted to be a race car driver. I just loved everything about cars, but I didn't have enough money to pursue my dreams. But as I started building up my investments, it allowed me to race in multiple championships and win countless trophies like this. I even got my helmet here, look. You sometimes see it at the back of the shots. How cool is that? My investments even allow me to spend time having fun making these YouTube videos, like the one you're watching. I don't currently make any money from this channel, and you can sit back and relax because I'm not going to try and sell you something at the end either. There are so many different investments out there. It's super easy to get distracted by the next shiny object. It's also confusing when you have someone telling you that this is the best thing, the latest and greatest, and if you don't invest, you could end up losing thousands. You may have heard of Bitcoin, penny stocks and short selling, but I found the key for me is not to get overwhelmed and distracted by the latest trends. Now you've got to face it, you are never going to be an expert at everything, and by consistently changing your investing strategy, you ultimately end up with less money, and at some point you're going to make a big mistake. I have nothing against experimenting, but I've kept my main investments very consistent over the years, and I make sure to only invest large sums of money into things that I understand completely. I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers, but I am going to be completely transparent about everything I've done that's helped me acquire a multi-million-dollar net worth. I'm a businessman and not a financial advisor, so I don't consider this financial advice. It's just what I've done and it's worked for me. First of all, you need to create more disposable income. At the end of the day, you need money to invest, and the more money you have, the better, especially during your 20s and 30s. Now, lots of people will say to you, save, save, save. Don't go out with your friends. Don't drink that overpriced coffee. Don't buy that nice car. I don't completely agree. Of course, saving is a big part of this, but you have to enjoy your life. There's really no point making yourself miserable just for the sake of saving an extra few dollars. You should focus most of your time and energy on increasing your income. You can do this by learning new valuable skills, having a side hustle, or building a scalable business. You don't have to settle for money you get from your 9-to-5 job. You need to be focusing your time on finding ways to supplement or replace it. When I was in my early 20s, I realised my income as a carpenter, earning less than $3 an hour, was never going to give me enough money to invest. It hardly even paid my bills. I needed to find a way to dramatically increase this, and this is when I started my journey into the business world. Investing and business really work hand in hand. The saying is very true. The more you learn, the more you earn. And most importantly, the more you can invest. Be really aware of your lifestyle and make sure to keep it in check. Just because you're earning more doesn't mean you should be spending more. Think of someone like, say, I don't know, Ed Sheeran. He has a huge amount of money, yet he keeps his lifestyle in check. He still enjoys the little pleasures of life. If you were happy making, let's say, $40,000 a year, and you managed to increase your income up to $100,000 a year, that means you've got an extra $60K. This should be going straight into a high interest savings account and then into your investments. You know, you don't need to be spending it. Well, there is one slight exception, and that's stage number 2. Pay off all your high interest debts. If you have student loans, credit card bills, or even a payday loan, then these are pulling you down. They're destroying your credit score, which ruins your ability to take advantage of good loans. By paying off these high interest debts first, you'll actually save more money than you could ever hope to make elsewhere. The next stage is to create a freedom fund. This is my name for an emergency fund that puts the power back in your hands. This freedom fund consists of 3 to 5 months of living expenses. It protects you if you decide to quit your job, as well as a lot of other situations such as recessions, depressions, or even worldwide epidemics. Okay, so you've increased your income by learning a valuable skill, or maybe invested in your own business. You've kept your lifestyle in check. You've paid off all your loans, and you've created the freedom fund. Now, and only now, is the time to start looking at other options. Let's start off with the lowest risk option,
index funds. An index fund is a collection of investments that you can put your money into and own a percentage of the entire thing. This gives you a fantastic diversification and protects you from poor stock choices. For example, let's say you got $1,000 and you invest it in, I don't know, let's say Apple stock. Because they're a big company, right? They're going to be safe. As soon as your money goes in, the company takes a turn for the worse, causing the stock price to crash. The result could be that you lose the majority of your investment. This is where index funds come in. Instead of owning just Apple stock, you could take that $1,000 and invest it in something like the S&P 500, which gives you small shares in Apple as well as Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Visa, Disney and many more. You're a shareholder of all these major companies. Now if something happened to Apple, it would be balanced out by the other investments in your index funds. Now lots of people will try and convince you that a mutual fund is superior. A mutual fund is very similar to an index fund, except it's controlled by a very smart person whose job it is to pick the stocks in the fund. The purpose of a mutual fund is to try and beat the market and get better results for the investor. However, in the vast majority of cases, you'd be much better off putting your money into a simple index fund with less risk and often a greater return. This is because index funds charge extremely low fees. The S&P 500 charges 0.07% annually, and mutual funds charge high fees between 1 to 2% of your account balance annually. If you invested $10,000 into a mutual fund, then $200 would go straight into that fund manager's wallet every single year, even if he caused you to lose money through poor stock choices. On the flip side, if you had the same amount invested in the S&P 500 index fund, then only $7, yes, just $7 would be leaving your account annually. This is because index funds are passively managed and therefore don't have to pay a manager who may or may not be doing a good job. For long-term investments, I love using Vanguard index funds as I like these. They're so easy to use. I'm not affiliated with Vanguard in any way. I just like the way it works. I also like to mix it up a little bit with some international funds and bonds to diversify my portfolio even more. The older you are, the more bonds I recommend you invest in. And I don't mean James Bond either, although he is pretty cool. The investment method I put the majority of my money into is real estate. I am much more of a real estate guy than a stock guy. I like real investments I can feel and touch, but I appreciate that it can be hard to buy properties with little money, but it's certainly something you should be saving for. My first property was a 1-bedroom apartment and I loved it. It was mine. It cost me around $50,000. And when I moved out, I decided to rent it $500 a month. I had this property for around about 10 years, and when I sold it for 150k. And after this, I was obsessed with the money that we could make from real estate. Now this is a good time to decide which type of investor you are. The first type is a capital gains investor. This is someone who likes to buy low and sell high and pocket the difference. These are investors that are interested in buying houses of auctions, or you may have seen the signs outside advertising that
multiple shops and warehouses. Then, almost overnight, the internet made it irrelevant. I had two choices: give up or adapt. You know me, I wasn't about to quit, so I threw myself into learning everything about making money online. And like most people today, I fell for the hype. I tried every method out there, and guess what? None of them were as easy as people said. But through trial and error, I cracked the code and rebuilt my businesses, but this time with the internet at the core of my strategy. Fast forward to today, and making money online isn't just important, it's an essential thing everyone should be doing. That's exactly why I'm making this video. I spent years testing, failing and refining, losing millions, making millions, and learning what actually works. Now with this knowledge, I can help you avoid all the mistakes and fast track your success. So if you're tired of false promises and ready to commit for the next 6 to 12 months and build something real, this is for you. No gimmicks, no BS, just the process that actually works. All right, so this is the online wealth wheel. And whether you realize it or not, you're already on it. There are 3 main stages that define where people are in their journey to making money online, plus a secret 4th stage that only a few ever reach. We'll discuss that one at the end.
Let's kick things off with stage one. This is where everyone starts with no side hustle. And sadly, 55% of people never start at all. Inflation is making everything more expensive. And let's be real, relying on a single paycheck is more dangerous than ever. So if having a side hustle is essential, why do 55% of people still avoid it? Because the online space is a jungle. It's full of ads pushing proven methods that confuse more people than they actually help. The key to starting the right way is picking a method that suits your skills, budget and lifestyle. If you already have a skill like video editing, graphic design, coding, or even setting up Discord servers, people pay great money for these services and there's no shortage of demand. But what if you don't have a skill to sell, or quite simply don't want to deal with clients? That's where product-based businesses come in. One of the best options is selling products online without ever holding inventory yourself. But I'll get into this in more detail later on. That brings me on to running a failing side hustle. I'm classing a failing side hustle as earning less than $50 per month online. Sadly, 28% of people are trapped here. A lot of people aren't going to like me saying this, but it has to be said. It's almost never your side hustle that's flawed or doesn't work. You're most likely just not putting enough time and effort in. I know that can be hard to hear, but this isn't really your fault. It's down to something called shiny object syndrome. This is when you constantly jump from one trendy online money-making method to another without committing and putting your absolute all into any of them. One week it's drop shipping, then print on demand, then selling books on Amazon KDP, then trading stocks, and then starting a social media agency. The truth is, all the online money-making methods I just mentioned work, but each requires a different level of time commitment, and you'll never get anywhere by jumping from one to the other. It's like that classic diagram of miners tirelessly digging for gold, only to give up just before striking it rich. Instead of pushing through, they abandon their progress, start fresh somewhere else, and waste all that initial effort repeating the cycle over and over again. If you get stuck in this dangerous pattern like the 28% of other people, then you need to recognize it and simply pick a method and stick to it. Forget the idea of a perfect side hustle. Just pick one that's easy to start and has the potential to scale. If you don't have a high income skill to sell, then I'm going to make this super simple for you. In all my years of experience, the thing that has made me the most amount of money online is e-commerce. So I recommend you focus on that, but not in the way most people do. A lot of beginners assume starting an online store means dealing with inventory, suppliers, or complex setups, but that's not the case anymore. That's because you can now utilize AI-built Shopify stores. Instead of spending weeks setting everything up like I had to back in the day, you can now use a free tool called buildyourstore.ai to launch a fully automated store that would normally cost $200 to $300 to set up. But this does it for free in a matter of minutes. You just enter your name and email, pick a niche like fashion, tech or pets, and the AI chooses winning products, designs your store and makes it look professional from day one. If you want to go through this process completely for free, then just click the link in the description and it'll walk you through everything. From there, it syncs directly with Shopify, giving you exclusive access to a 3-month Shopify trial for only $1 per month. But what about making sales? Well, the biggest mistake people make with e-commerce is giving up too soon. Surprise, surprise. This is probably because they don't want to deal with inventory or fulfillment. That's why the free AI store builder also walks you through how to integrate a tool called AutoDS, which is kind of like the autopilot system on a plane. It imports trending products, updates pricing and images, and even ships orders directly to your customers. This means you don't have to touch inventory, package anything, or deal with supplier negotiations. You focus on driving traffic and making sales while the system handles the rest. Full disclosure, AutoDS are long-term supporters of this channel, but even if they weren't sponsoring this portion of the video, I'd still recommend them. You can easily create a buzz around your products by creating videos about them on TikTok for free. If you get 100k views and just 1% of the people go and buy your product for $10, then that's $10,000 in revenue. So if you're serious about breaking out of the failing side hustle trap, then choosing a simple automated model like this gives you the best chance at success. No more bouncing between business ideas, just commit, launch, and put in the work to scale it up. Stage 3 is running a successful side hustle. Believe it or not, only 16% of people who start making money online ever make more than $50 per month. The people in this percentile make anywhere from $51 on the low end all the way up to $10,000 a month. Of course, the higher end is what I'd consider actually successful. So what are these 16% of people doing differently, and how can you start applying it to yourself? Well, there's some clear things that I've noticed that separate the people who struggle from those who actually make money online. And to help you get there, I'm going to break them down into 4 key steps that you can follow. Step 1 is to stop trying to appeal to everyone. You might think casting a wide net will get you more sales, but in reality, it does the opposite. If you try to appeal to everyone, you'll appeal to no one. So before you even start promoting your store, grab a notepad or open your notes app and describe $2 on a sweet treat and $1.40 on unwanted subscriptions every day. Then that's the same as spending $10,000 every single year. This is the reality for most people. As soon as they get paid, the money just seems to disappear. And that's because they don't have a paycheck routine. This is so important because being careful with my money in my late teens and early 20s was the thing that enabled me to become the first millionaire in my family. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 things I did every time I got paid, so you can apply them too and hopefully achieve even better results. This will not only help you save extra money, but also build your wealth. And the beauty of all of this, you won't have to work any harder than you currently do. Right, let's imagine you've just been paid. The first thing you should do is separate your wants and needs. Believe it or not, this is one of the hardest things for people, even though it sounds simple. Especially nowadays, most people are used to such a high standard of living that they find it hard to cut down on their little pleasures. These might seem small and insignificant, but in the long term, these little pleasures are actually robbing you of your financial freedom. Even if you think this doesn't apply to you, I still want you to do this exercise. You might surprise yourself with the things you uncover that are draining your money. So, grab a pen and a piece of paper and split it into 2 columns. So you've got wants and needs. Now get some of your recent bank statements. It's probably best to get around 6 months worth and start highlighting all the things you repeatedly spend money on every month. For now, let's ignore the one-off purchases. Unless you're repeatedly buying a lot of random stuff, then this shouldn't be a huge issue. I'm more interested in focusing on those little purchases that stack up over time. Once you finish doing that, it's time to sort them into the correct column. Needs should be things like rent, insurance, bills, and other utilities. The rule is, if you can survive without them, then it's not a need. Your wants should be all the fun stuff like nights out, restaurants, bowling, golf, whatever floats your boat. Once you've completed both sides, then it's time to figure out how much each column costs per month. Let's start with needs. Let's say your rent, insurance, bills, and utilities add up to $1,200 a month. This is the bare minimum you need to get by each month, also known as your financial baseline. Once you know your baseline, subtract it from your monthly income to see how much you've got left over. Many people say your financial baseline should be under 50% of your total income, but to be completely honest with you, I think it should be closer to 25%. Now, don't treat this needs column as something you can't change, as there are things you can do to bring down the costs, but still meet all your basic needs. You might need a car, for example, but it's worth asking yourself, do you need a car that costs so much? The same goes for where you live. Some apartments can be mega expensive nowadays, especially in city locations, but this is where you need to start weighing things up. Would it be cheaper to commute each day? Probably. So consider moving somewhere that you can actually afford. I mean, if you can share a house for a year to save up some money that you can invest, which could help you buy your dream home, why wouldn't you? Look, maybe you don't want to cut back anymore, and that's completely fine, but it's worth seeing if there are some areas you can save money without impacting the quality of your life too much. If you can't reduce your bills, you're going to have to increase your income, which is completely possible by getting a promotion or starting a side hustle. Remember, your earning potential is always higher than your saving potential. I know making your needs cost less than 25% of your paycheck might sound a bit impossible right now, and how it might sound coming from a boomer millionaire, but I really do understand what it's like to earn very little. I didn't grow up wealthy, and it took me a considerable amount of time to boost my income to hit a financial baseline of 25% of my salary. But trust me, if I can do it, so can you, especially with all the online side hustle opportunities you can take advantage of. So don't think I'm just saying if you're poor then just earn more money. I understand there is much more to it than that. Just treat my 25% rule as a target to work towards. Now for the wants column. Add them all up and subtract them from your wage. Ideally, this should be below 25% of your paycheck because we need a decent amount of money for the next steps to start getting you ahead. The second place your money should be going is into a high interest savings account. So in an ideal world, you'll have about 50% of your paycheck left at this point. Most people would just tell you to save all of it. However, that's not going to help you build your wealth. Instead, I recommend sending 20% into a high interest savings account. It's best to use a different bank to your everyday account, as otherwise it's just too tempting to spend it. Some great options are Chase in the UK and Ally Bank in America. I say high interest, but that's all dependent on when you're watching this video. Currently, my savings account gets around 4% interest a year, which is definitely better than my current account, which is around 0.05%. I know some of you are already commenting, I know a bank account with 7% interest. Don't get me wrong, this is great as long as you don't have to lock away your money for a set amount of time and the bank is reliable. The whole purpose of this savings account is to act as a safety net that you can withdraw money from in an emergency. It's not there to make you money. So locking it away for a set amount of time actually completely goes against the point of doing this. I can't even begin to tell you how important it is to have a safety net. Now, I know you've probably heard this 1,000 times, but that's because it's great advice. Life isn't smooth sailing, and at some point, an emergency will come your way. This pot of gold will always be there for you when you need it. So say you got sick and couldn't work, or the car broke down, you'd be able to cope with this situation just fine. I must reiterate that this money is only to be used in serious situations and not just something to dip into when you're running low and want that extra pint of beer. It's just shocking to me, as of May 2023, 1 in 5 Americans have no emergency fund at all. So if something went wrong, which it will, they have no way of coping with it and would most likely have to take out a loan, which most of the time ends up with them paying crazy interest rates and falling even further behind. So how much should your emergency fund be? Well, I'd say your emergency fund should be 3 to 5 months of your baseline figure that we discussed earlier. Even better if you can stretch that to 6 months. So once you've put by 20% of your paycheck for enough months to hit this figure, then you can allocate more money to the next places we're going to be talking about. In an ideal world, you should have 30% of your paycheck left by this point. So where should you put the rest? Well, next is the only place you'll ever get a guaranteed return on investment. Let me explain. Normally, if someone tells you they can make you a guaranteed profit, then I'd say run away as fast as you can. It's normally the grifters feeding people this garbage. However, in this instance, it's 100% true, as I'm talking about paying down your high interest debt. I mean, why bother investing in stocks for a possible 8 to 10% return when you can have a guaranteed 25% return by paying off the debt that's constantly eating into your wealth every single day? It's kind of like someone asking you what the best foods are to eat and exercise routines to follow, while knowingly having a parasite inside their body sucking away all the nutrients. Of course, a doctor's main priority is getting rid of that parasite, as it's pretty much guaranteed that you'll feel better. So if you have high interest debt, then I'd recommend putting the remaining 30% of your paycheck towards paying it off. There are 2 really common methods that you can use to pay down your debts. The first way is the avalanche method, and this is the most logical way to tackle debt because you pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first. So let's see how this will work in the real world. Imagine you've got 3 different debts. Debt A is for your credit card and it's $5,000 with an interest rate of 20%. Debt B is a loan from your family of $1,500 with no interest rate. And Debt C is a car loan for $2,500 at an interest rate of 15%. If you decide to pay $500 per month towards your debts using the avalanche method, this would firstly all go towards Debt A until it's paid off. as it's the highest interest rate. This would take around 13 months and you'll end up paying $515.22 of interest. After this, your $500 payments would go into debt C, and it would take a further 5 months to pay off that, which would include $98.13 of interest. Then it would finally be time to attack debt B, as your family are probably getting a bit impatient for their money. This would take 3 months and obviously you'd pay no interest. So with the avalanche method, you'd be debt free in 21 months and pay approximately $613 in interest. The second option is the snowball method. This is the psychological way to tackle debt because you pay off the smallest debts first. The thinking behind this is it makes you feel like you're making faster progress. So you'd pay debt B first, followed by debt C, and then finally debt A. However, if you use this method, it would take you around 23 months and cost approximately $1,700 in interest payments. That's 2 months and over $1,000 more than using the avalanche method. So if you can stick to the logical approach, it'll be worth it in the long run. Once you finish building your safety net and paid off any high interest debts, you can put that combined 50% towards growing your wealth. That's why place number 4 is a tax advantage investing account. When you get your paycheck, income tax gets taken out of it right away. Go to the store and buy something and you'll run into sales tax. If you own a property, you'll pay property taxes every year. Even when you invest and eventually make a profit, you'll be hit with capital gains tax. Unfortunately, I can't help you with most of them, but luckily there's a legal way to avoid paying capital gains tax on your investments. If you're in the UK, you're going to want to get yourself a stocks and shares ISA, and if you're in the US, you should get the equivalent, which is a Roth IRA. They both have different rules, which I've discussed in past videos, but the bottom line is, both these accounts allow you to invest without worrying about taxes. If I were you, I'd put 35 to 40% of your excess money into one of these accounts and invest it in a low-cost index fund like the S&P 500. Over the years, this has made me on average around about 8 to 10% tax-free per year. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor and this shouldn't be taken as financial advice. Stocks can go down as well as up, so it's important to understand the risks involved. Just imagine if you invested $250 per month, then assuming an 8% average annual return, you'll have $1.3 million in 45 years' time, completely tax-free. Feel free to head over to the Compound Interest Calculator website to do the maths for yourself. I understand it's a pretty slow way to build wealth. However, if you're consistent, then historically it's proven a very successful strategy. One of my favorite investing platforms is Trading 212, as they offer a stocks and shares ISA. Since I was planning to talk about their app anyway, I reached out to them to see if they'd be interested in sponsoring this portion of the video. They agreed and are also offering a free fraction